conversation with you about your work, and just thank you for sharing your phenomenal debut with all of us.
Yeah.
Are you going to be reading? Are we going to be talking? How are we doing this?
So how about let's just start. I will start with reading, if that sounds good, and then we can just have a little conversation.
Yes.
So this is a book, it's a holding memoir about mothers, drugs, and other comforts. I'm actually not going to be reading a chapter that's directly about mothers or drugs. It's kind of indirectly about those things, but it really focuses on myself when I was younger and the kind of worrywart that I was, all the anxieties I had, and my formative friendships with girls, girl friendships. So I will start there. I've always been anxious. I was a serious, watchful child, the kid mom or grandma had to scoop up from slumber parties before the slumbering occurred, who was afraid of PE and its accompanying balls, afraid of the girls at the bus stop who wore swatches and licked poles of sugarcane and threatened to beat me up for being a retard who stared hard. On family trips, I watched red brake lights, read road signs out loud as the Sibs slept or played slug bug. I'd shriek when we passed semis, when we approached slowed cars too aggressively, causing Mom to once swerve into a muddy shoulder, cursing I'd almost made a wreck. In high school, it was calories, sex, and substances I feared, the attendant expanding and opening of my body, the allowance of something other to enter me, hurt me, change me, have control over me. I nursed the same warm beer at keggers, never inhaled the piney smoke from blown glass pipes. I subsisted on pickles, snack wells, and lunch meat. Refused to fall in love with people made of flesh and blood, reserving my lust for the greasy-haired subjects of glossy rock mags, whose pages I tacked to the ceiling above my top bunk. I wanted to be like my best friend Erica, to whom I clung fiercely. With her, I was safe, loved, fulfilled. We'd share clothes, food, secrets, her twin bed, even on school nights, our legs entangled, my nose pressed against her freckled arm, or in her permed red hair, breathing in her scent of violets, rainbreak, and dog. We bought each other gifts, anything that had to do with angels, fairies, butterflies, other winged beings. Unlike me, Erica swallowed gurgling bong rips and fucked reverse cowgirl and swung her strong legs into passenger seats, baring her gleaming teeth to the wind as if she were flying. She was college-bound, hell-bound, perfectly balanced. It was a mystery to me how she could receive or reject with such assurance and fearlessness. She knew exactly where her edges were, where she stopped, and everything else began. Jacques Lacan's objet petit a refers to the phantom limb, the vestige that appears when an infant perceives she's separated from her mother's body, from her breast, lap, and gaze, and thrust into the world as a socialized and symbolized individual with borders defined both by language and physical form. We only see this, quote, object the very moment it vanishes, and unconsciously long for it with flawed nostalgia, idealizing it as a state of perpetual bliss when it never actually was. In fact, it was in this state that anxiety was born. Quote, "Don't you know it's not the longing for the maternal breast that provokes anxiety, but its imminence," Lacan states in Anxiety Seminar Book 10. He clarifies that the security of presence is the possibility of absence. In other words, it's the looming boob that teaches anxiety, not the absence of it. It seems I was so arrested in the original infantile anxiety of Mom's doting proximity that even after our figurative severance, I was constantly aware of her awareness of me, of her perception of me as either pride and joy or pain and neck. I was homesick for the latch, her arms, the time I thought we were one and the same, before I knew I was my own person. I found solace, completion, in the feverishly intimate friendships I forged with headstrong, Rubenesque girls from whose insides I could imagine emerging. Before I was ever dope sick, I was womb sick. It makes sense that after high school I moved into a house of pretend orphans, a punk house. It was childhood redux, baby barrettes and Mary Jane shoes and secondhand strawberry shortcake bed sheets. In school we'd been the freaks, the nerds, the gay rods. Now we ate food out of dumpsters, drank 40s of King Cobra, had scabies and head lice, infected piercings, a bathtub stained with hair dye, a rainbow of molds. I didn't feel shitty about myself inside those grimy walls. I wasn't judged or shamed or ignored or pushed into becoming somebody I was too afraid to become. There, I was a reenactor, reclaimer of my childhood. I was a poser in intentionally ripped tights. I was extra-societal, exoskeletal, with a hardness that was as determined and make-believe as my innocence. It was there I'd become friends with Mercedes, like Erica, like Mom. She had an arresting presence, tall, with a maternal span of hips, a lived-in preternatural beauty, and a subtle smirk of knowing, or maybe it was of gracious amusement as she slummed with the punk kids for the evening, taking swigs from my bottle of Boone's Strawberry Hill. All of it belied her mere 19 years. She wore a big musty coat whose lining drooped from the bottom, platform boots, bangs so long they cloaked her eyes and scraped her cheeks. When she smiled at me, her irises glinted from behind dark hair. Her mouth was a perfect heart like a valentine, a mole in nearby proximity. I wanted to kiss her, swallow her, know her, be her. The acute intensity of our friendship lasted a few sultry months between June and September. She'd take me back to her house, where her mom was asleep down a hallway behind an eternally closed door. She'd make me tortilla soup and we'd watch anime or talk about sex. She'd have plenty of it, with rich boys and amoral men and explorative girls. She'd spread a photo album across our knees, tell me stories to accompany each photograph, so it felt as if I was reliving her past with her, the two of us side by side. At night, we'd sleep together in her four-poster bed, its cotton sheets so worn they'd become silk. She'd fling an arm across my chest, mumble some bit of nonsensical dream, and I'd lie there, stirless, scintillating, listening to her breathing, my breathing, feeling both an airy serenity and the metallic zap of anxiety, the paradoxical qualities of desire, the awareness of full, the foreknowledge of lack, or the body at odds with the mind. Once I accompanied her to the drugstore where she bought peachy folders and binders and college-ruled notebooks for back to school. She bought little pots of eyeshadow in unnatural hues, ponytail elastics, sugar-free gum. Afterward, we went and got wet burritos. Then we drove into the neighborhood by the fairgrounds. She parked the car near a cluster of stables, recently vacated, as the horse races had just left town. She had me wait in the car as she went to go knock on a door somewhere down a row of shacks. When she returned, her glossy teeth winked at me. We went back to the punk house, and she lured me into the bathroom, looped her arm around mine, and whispered in my ear. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, brandished a spoon she'd nabbed from the kitchen, and dramatically bent its handle. I watched as she plopped a sticky black chunk into its concavity and held it above a lighter, as she removed an orange-capped hypodermic needle from her purse and steadied it atop a cotton she'd spun from the fluff of a Q-tip. Then, unbuttoning her fly and modestly baring a partial butt cheek to the blind wall behind us, she jabbed the needle into a thick pinch of ass fat. Or at least I think she did. I consider that maybe she'd actually just emptied the rig onto the filthy floor or into the dark fabric of her jeans. It was too hard to believe that that woman, that girl rather, who guided me and taught me and held me and fed me and saw me, would be so negligent with her own life. It had to have been a show to impress me, and it did impress me. The act put her in another camp, one I was unfamiliar with and intimidated by. After that night, our friendship faded. And that's where I'll stop.
Thank you, Karleigh.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh, there's so much I want to ask you about. I prepared so many questions,
Okay.
like the dork that I am. I'm going to talk about space of creative nonfiction, how the book was born, and when you started, when did you start writing Holding? What has your writing and publishing journey been like?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's so hard for me to like exactly zero in on the start date because I've always written, and I think that I would write little pieces that were like, I don't know, journal entries or maybe a short fiction story that I kind of like changed things around. But when I got serious about writing was when I was doing my MFA, and that wasn't until I started my MFA in 2016. So that's when I really started to take it seriously for my thesis project. It looked totally different, and I didn't want it to be about addiction because of the shame, but I did want it to be in there, so I like buried it. I like actually tried to, starting in 2017, I got like to work with my thesis advisor, and there had just been the Tufts fire in Santa Rosa. So I started my book more as an ecological book and a look at wildfire and everything that was going on then, and like the loss of my family's home and memories, but then somehow tried to shoehorn this like drug narrative in there, and like they weren't really working together. It's like I wanted to tell both stories at the same time, and I didn't know how to do that. So yeah, I had gone to, how it kind of became more of this is I had gone to Tin House and I took a workshop with Melissa Febos, and she's like, this is a recovery book. That like, name it what it is, call it what it is. Like that you're trying to make it this thing that it isn't, and that was like my own shame, like, oh, nobody wants to read, there's a stigma about addiction memoirs, like you've read them all before, and that's when I guess I was given the permission to just like do it as I was gonna do it. And that was after I'd already like presented my thesis, but that's when I kind of got to work and writing it really though in the shape that it is now.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I love Melissa Febos.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have the letter because she wrote little notes, and then we also had to like write notes to each other that she wrote notes on, and then she sent them to us a year later. So it was interesting to look back at it. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I mean, I do feel like sometimes it's so relatable to need a voice outside of the self to call a book what it's perhaps attempting to be. But especially when there's like shame in there, and I think that that's so relatable for nonfiction writers, especially in the space of memoir, like how to almost work around that shame that can maybe show up before the book shows up.
Right. Yeah, there's so much shame, and it's not even just the drug and recovery component of it. I would say in memoir itself, there's like, oh, it's navel gazing, and you don't want to write too much about the self. Like, so you have to try to like hide the self, and I think that I thought I was doing something more noble, which is still like something that I'm working on and would like to have, kind of the other story, but I thought somehow like I could trick you, like kind of putting like medicine inside, like when you're giving a dog like a pill and you put it inside of a little like treat or whatever. That's kind of what I thought I was trying to do with that one.
So I'm going to read from an interview between you and Thomas Moniz, and I just thought that Moniz described your craft and Holding really well. Moniz writes, for a long time as a creative nonfiction writer, I wrote about parenting, always struggling to walk that line between writing about how I wanted to be versus how I actually was as a parent, all my mistakes, my regrets, as well as my successes. Moniz was fascinated by the craft of holding, as am I, appreciating the narrative distance that you establish, and just noting some of the moments in the book, and I felt this way as well as a reader, they felt so intimate and so visceral, certainly some of what you read tonight, and they were also quite measured, objective, and especially when writing about addiction, self-discovery, relationship between mothers and daughters, these are such personal topics, and I'm curious, over the space of the writing, and especially after that conversation and working with Melissa Febos, like, how did you come to strike that balance with respect to the narrative distance, or thinking about Vivian Gornick, the situation in the story? You balance that so well. So would you speak to that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, really, I had to like not grapple with, but just really think about like what is the larger story that I'm saying, telling here. Like, so what? Like, a lot of people have addictions. What am I really getting at? And I think like what kept coming up as I was writing was a return to my mother. Like that wasn't a natural, it wasn't like, oh, well, I'm gonna have that be kind of the like triangulated thing, because I feel like it's like the drug recovery and then like the mom component and then like, I guess me. But the mom component emerged organically because in so much of what I was writing, it just kept coming up even though I wasn't intending it to, you know, because I was writing a lot about Gloria Ann, who's sort of like the foil to my mom. When, you know, if you read the book, she's the mother of the boyfriend with whom I was with, and we like lived with his parents. So I guess now, and I'm like forgetting the question, but in terms of the distance, I think once I tackled down like what exactly like is the bigger story that people are going to relate to, that anybody regardless of having a drug addiction in their life, whether personally or with someone they knew, that it could still relate to like every person that reads it would have something that they could take away from it. And the distance, I think that because it's such heavy material, I tried to do that a lot with kind of having the cold, observant eye that comes out. Like in the passage that I read, there's Lacan, but I tend to like try to like think of it like on a bigger level what's going on here, and I think kind of those breaks away from just so much hot, dramatic, or even dark at times stuff, to have kind of the cold, clinical language of explaining like bigger phenomena, whether that's philosophy or whether that's physiology or whatever that may be, kind of tempers the heat of just such an intense topic.
And I was wondering also if part of what, you know, to use your language, like tempered that heat, but for me also as a reader, brought it to the page in such a like a way, is just like the distance of time. And I'm curious to know, you know, your author's forward, you write that most of the events in the book happened between 1997 to 2003. As a fellow 90s kid, I just felt like I was back in the punk houses that I used to hang out at. I mean, there was just so much resonance in terms of that particular place and time, and, you know, the way that I was intersecting with those subcultures. It was in the Midwest, it wasn't on the West Coast, but just the ephemera of a particular period was so rich in your work. And was that something that you evoked specifically, exclusively through memory? You know, the characters that you read and described tonight were so vivid to me in your reading, and certainly when I was reading Holding. So how did you know, kind of get yourself back there, and did that also, as you were writing, establish some of that narrative distance for you?
That's a great question, and I use many tactics to try to get back to that place, to get like the memories to be as like thick and vivid as possible. I would listen to music that I knew that I listened to during that time period, like specifically then, so that way it really would just take me back and give me vivid memories. But also, I'm just a person who I think that's why I got into writing in the first place, is it's the descriptions and it's the scene and it's all the like weird small details that I like hang on to. So that's like what got me into the art of writing in the first place. And so a lot of that is just my own memory, but it certainly helped to go back in time with photographs, with music, anything I could to kind of like time travel to those. Yeah, and it was important for me to keep in the time and place, like the 90s through the early 2000s in the Bay, like North Bay. It was really important for me to capture that, to just make it more alive.
Thank you. I was thinking about my questions and what emerged, which doesn't always happen when I'm preparing to talk to an author, but these different, like, almost like thematic categories kept coming up for me, and I was thinking a lot about like girlhood and friendship, and especially in the section that you read from tonight, thinking about these relationships with Erica and Mercedes. You know, in the interview I read from earlier, you describe these as romantic friendships. And I feel like friendship, especially in youth, is so powerful and transformative, and also instructive in some way. Like I just, you know, have my own memories of looking to someone slightly older than me who I felt this intense admiration for, and how far that can like lead almost the development of a self or an
Yeah.
identity. It's so, you know, vivid and like compelling at that time. And so, what to you is how you think of like romance in relation to these friendships, or like youth and idealization and friendship? I'd just love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, these friendships for me were definitely so formative, and I don't know if obviously it's not like unique to me, but I think there is something with young people when they are trying to find their identities, and then they find the people that they kind of latch onto and want to be more like, and it is more of a romantic thing because the intensity of it isn't like how your friendships are as an adult. For me, particularly with Erica, it feels like we were just inseparable, spending every day together. It's like basically like romantic minus the sex of it, but it was like I loved her more than anything, she loved me more than anything, and you know, I'm kind of trying to be her, and maybe there's something in me that she's trying to be, you know, and this is how we form who we are. And the same thing with Mercedes, and I think a lot of it like it's how it's like by taking like, you know, a young person not knowing who they are and then taking these other women who you think you might want to be and trying that on and hanging out with them and kind of trying to like catch a little bit of like their spirit or their essence, bring it into yourself. Yeah.
I feel like this is connected to girlhood and friendship. There's a minor character in the Demeter and Persephone mother-daughter myth, Balbo. Are you familiar with
I'm not
this?
familiar with Balbo, no.
Okay, so this figure, and this I promise connects to your work. This is a character who, or a figure in this story who's recognized as the goddess of joy, but importantly of obscene humor.
Okay.
And Bao like comes up to Demeter. The short of it is, when Demeter is in a state of intense grief and is crying and has refused food, and essentially like tells a crass joke, and Demeter laughs, and after begins to kind of accept food and like emerges in a sense from this state of intense grief. And so with the section that you read from tonight, there's a lot of like joyfulness in the scene before what is, I think, like also like a very chilling moment, right? Like that moment in the bathroom is very like, you know, like don't do this thing, right? Like it has that charge, but you set the reader up with all of this levity and all this joy. And so this tussle, you know, in like mother-daughter relationships or friendship between almost like the sacred and the profane, or I don't know. I mean, I just found myself thinking a lot about this figure who kind of represents both. Like represents something that has an edge and has some teeth, but also is a source of joy and is a source of healing.
Yeah.
And did you find yourself kind of coming to those different like junctures in these memories, and you know, in your description of certain relationships?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's like a really good observation. I like the bringing in Balbo, you know, because I think even with like the mother characters, both my mother and Glorianne, I got that kind of like both sides, you know, where they're both a source of comfort and joy, yet also there's this other edge, there's something that I'm not sure of, and it's like wanting them, like I feel like Mercedes and Erica, the two girls that I just read about, were like replacements for the sort of mother thing that I was trying to feel. There's a chapter in there where I talk about my mom and I like standing in front of the mirror, we would just like talk, and I would watch my mom go from like my peer to my mother with the removal of makeup, like, you know, because she was always like getting ready and putting on her makeup, and like sometimes she could be my friend and we could gossip about stuff and we were like on a peer level, but then she would say something that would like snap it all back into focus, where I'm remembering again that she is not my peer, she is my mother, like something that might hurt me even if it wasn't meant to hurt me, but it would remind me of our sort of where we were, like our hierarchy, you know, like she's always going to be my mother no matter what. And I think that there was, that kind of like back and forth, dark and light, you know, shifting with the friendships with my mom. Like there is definitely a connection there.
Yeah. I was thinking about motherhood, of course, through reading your work, and recently, I have a 4.5-month-old, I was recently like hugely pregnant, and I took a class about writing motherhood it was taught by Rachel Yoder, who wrote Night Bitch, and she's so good. But one of the things that I remember Rachel Yoder saying about motherhood is that to be in motherhood is to be in, or to be mothered. To be in motherhood is to be in opposing states at the same time, to heal and to wound, to repair and to enliven trauma. And in the way that you're approaching the topic of motherhood, you're also approaching it right from this retrospective where this is not a kind of work being written in the living of these events, right? Exactly. And so I'm curious about kind of how you have seen your relationship to motherhood, nurture. You were speaking to this hierarchy, and like I think that's such a gorgeous and vivid way to think about that, like transformation from peer to mother-daughter, with like the removing of the makeup. How have your ideas about motherhood shifted through the project of this book?
A lot. Like I have so much, not that I didn't have empathy for my mom, but I definitely like in writing it all out and like reading about it and researching it and like really delving into this, it's like I can't help but see like the humanity of my mother. And we tend to, and by we I just sort of mean, I don't know, the mother is often a symbol and we just look at her like she's the creator of life, she's this big thing. We have these expectations for like who our mother is. More so, the mom tends to get that, I feel like, more than fathers. It's kind of not fair, but I guess because she is the one that like creates the life, and she is just a human as well. So I think writing this brought my mom down more to like a human level, and like definitely gave me more of an understanding. I also have had a lot of people who've approached me about the book, not relating so much to like the drug stuff, but more like relating to my mom, to the mother character. Like I too feel like once my kids hit a certain age, I don't have the same affection towards them as I did when they were little, because I kind of fear them. And I was like, oh, I actually never thought about that before. There were just so many things that I didn't even know that I was necessarily getting at when I was writing. So it just gave me so much more of a like clearer perspective of the mother. And I'm not a mother, so I'm doing this all from the outside. And yeah.
Beautiful. I just, I keep thinking about like how how on these kinds of book tour conversations, you're sort of so like at the whim of me. Thank you. And like what I find really like cool and exciting and compelling in your work. But what do you enjoy thinking about at the level of just like craft, or when you're coming to talk about writing? Like what are you excited to be thinking about and talking about right now in relation to your work, or what you're working on currently?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm working on a novel right now, and it doesn't feel like a foray into fiction. It feels like I've already been writing fiction all along, but this was just like the thing I needed to do, and did it. And but that, which like the working title is Motherload, so it's like, oh my God, can you like let go of mother stuff? But there is like a main character who like is estranged from her mother, so there's definitely like the mom stuff is still there. So it looks totally different, and it's like a joyful, not dark. It's like such a departure from having written this, and I'm excited about that. I think I'm excited about just as I write, like what I discover. I mean, I know people have, like I've never related to like video games. I've never played video games, but then I think about it sometimes that like, and I think I'm bringing it up because a lot of my coworkers, like it's like they're speaking another language because they all play like a game, so they'll just be like, oh yeah, so da-da-da, and they'll name some very specific thing, and I'm wondering, is it a TV show? Like, what are they talking about? But I feel like with me, with writing, it's like that same thing where I enter like a world that's outside of the world, and it's not just the world of the novel, but it's the world of the making of the novel, or not necessarily the novel, but the memoir. It's the world of, like, I can fall into this creative mode where I'm making something, and there's a puzzling, like there's research that needs to be done, and that's fascinating, and that brings me, like in some ways it writes itself because it it opens my eyes and brings me to somewhere where I didn't know that I was going to go. And even with fiction, you have to do so much research. So these are all the things that are fascinating me right now and have always fascinated me about writing, like long form. I mean, I like writing obviously shorter essays and stuff too, but with long form, you really are like getting into it. Like you're making a commitment and you're gonna spend years and you're gonna go into this place every day, kind of where you left off, like here I am on this level or whatever, and you're gonna get through it, and you might have to go back and edit, like start over that level, but every time you're getting a little bit further. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but it's definitely like what I've been excited about with just writing writ large always.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Does research for fiction feel different? Is it different than research for nonfiction?
Yes and no. Like I would say the research for, like, it's more playful and it's more like where I'm not sure where it's going to take me necessarily. Like I research for fiction because I want like things to be accurate because I'm building a world that's a real world. So I'm like, okay, if my guy is making custom fishing rods, I don't know anything about making custom fishing rods, so maybe I should like read a little bit about that. And then I start reading about fishing, and then I'm reading about like how to do like largemouth bass fishing and like the different spinners they use, and this is all in my book. And now I'm like learning, like I'm seeing these metaphors in the actual act of like largemouth bass lake fishing, freshwater fishing, using like just very specified things. I'm like going down the rabbit hole watching YouTube videos that like fishermen make, and like all of this adds to it. And I didn't know that yet. I didn't know yet when I made a character who makes fishing rods that this whole world is going to open up, and that kind of like directs me a little bit more where I'm going to go, or adds a richness, or adds a metaphor, or I find a pattern in it that I didn't know that I was going to find, and that's like really exciting. It always feels like kismet, like, oh, I'm on the right path, like this was meant to happen. I was meant to see this little metaphor here because it's kind of what I'm saying already, and now it's here, and I'm just going to leave it there subtly and people will like pick up on it. So, and with nonfiction, it's less, I'm not saying it's not less fun, but you are doing a little of that pattern and metaphor. You're doing a little of that as well, but there's more of like a specific thing that you're trying to tell. And so like I have my books ahead of time. I'm reading my books ahead of time, and it's kind of helping shape it. And it is different, but it is the same. There's a little bit more like play and flexibility with fiction.
I'm really delighted that you're researching largemouth bass. That's really like wonderful.
Thanks.
Well, maybe if the audience has questions, we can open it up and yeah.
How has it felt having your book in the world? It sounds like it's a very personal, intimate book. Has that felt okay having?
Yeah. Believe it or not, I was really afraid before it came out because I was more afraid of like hurting people's feelings, hurting my family's feelings. Mainly my mom or my dad, but that has not been the case. Like my family is totally happy with it and loves it, so that feels good because I would never want to hurt anybody, and I tried to be as like generous as possible, even while showing the things that like maybe upset me at the time. I did have talks with everyone, like kind of letting them know like some stuff that might be there, reminding them that this is my memory, saying like, if it seems I'm mad, that's that character, that's not me, that's not the narrator. And everyone seems to understand that, so that has been good. And since it's been out, it's been great, it's just been like a whirlwind of touring because I like left right after Pub Day, so it just has been, I'm still in this weird like vortex of the book. Like I haven't gone back to work since the book has come out, so it's been weird, surreal. Thank you. Excuse me, I'm like have a little cough if you haven't noticed. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. Thanks for having us. Thank you.